needing a sense of adventure. I think that probably all of us have a little adventure in us. And if we had to rank ourselves on the spectrum of adventure, like most things in our personality, there is a big gap between the extreme and the little. Probably the most adventurous are those people who are, for example, willing to jump out of an airplane. I am not that adventurous. And others, take very, very few risks in life. And I would say for myself, I'm probably a little bit in the middle. I like new things and adventures. For example, when I was in graduate school seminary, after my first year, I went to language school in Antigua, Guatemala. And I went with one of my classmates. So for 4 weeks, we spent time in a different country at a language school. And I was definitely comforted knowing that I had an amigo with me, somebody that I could talk to or rely on. The second time I went to language school in seminary, which was a year later, I decided that I wanted to embark on the trip by myself. So I went to San Jose, Costa Rica to another language school, and I knew that I would learn something about myself if I took this adventure alone. My mom, as most moms would say, are you crazy? Why do you want to go to Costa Rica to study Spanish all by yourself? But I knew if I lived with a family that spoke no English, if I had to sort of navigate myself around the city, that I would be better off for it, having a sense of adventure. Now, certainly in today's gospel, we have Peter, who oftentimes is a little impulsive. Now, I don't know if impulsiveness or a sense of adventure are identical, but sometimes I imagine people who have a great sense of adventure might be a little impulsive. So in this part of Matthew's gospel, both last weekend and this weekend, the scriptures follow each other. Jesus fed the 5,000, not counting women and children. And today we have this miracle of Jesus walking on the water. In this part of Matthew's gospel, the disciples are beginning to grow in their understanding of who Jesus is, that Jesus is indeed a miracle worker. He could feed people with little, that he took what he had, blessed it, broke it, and shared it, and there was enough for everyone. In fact, there was more than enough. There was something left over, and the disciples were absolutely amazed at who Jesus was. Now, the scene continues that they leave that deserted place and they get into a boat on the Sea of Galilee. The Sea of Galilee is not nearly as big as Lake Erie. You can see across it. But at times, obviously, it would get a little rough. And they experience Jesus walking towards them on the water. And they thought it was a ghost. And Jesus says, "Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid." And then Peter says, "Well, let me come to you." And Jesus invited him to come. So Jesus invites Peter, and Peter, with the sense of adventure, got out of the boat and walked towards Jesus. And it wasn't until he became afraid by the things that were happening around him that he began to sink. And one of the beautiful things in the scripture is that Jesus did not hesitate. Peter says, "Lord, save me." And the word the evangelist uses immediately. Immediately, Jesus stretched out his hand and caught Peter. And what Jesus criticized Peter for was the lack of faith. So the question that I would like to pose to all of us here, including myself, is what keeps us from approaching Jesus? What keeps us from the safety of the boat that we find ourselves in and allowing ourselves to go out and reach Jesus? What keeps us from that? And perhaps it's not a physical adventure that we need to go on. It's not like, those Survivor Island or some of these other crazy things that are on television. But perhaps it's really just leaving ourselves behind, leaving our fear, leaving our uncertainty. Perhaps we're a little bashful or shy. I would imagine in this room there are some of us who probably say every day to someone that I'll pray for you. And perhaps there's others that would probably never say that. But why not? What keeps us from this adventure of proclaiming our faith to the world? Peter asked Jesus, "Let me come to you." And Jesus says, "Come." And he says that same word to us. And when we think that we are afraid, and sometimes it is a scary world out there, Peter mentioned these three words: "Lord, save me." And that's what we need to do. If we get in over our heads, just ask for help, and Jesus will be there to save us. And then the words that the apostles in that boat said about Jesus also needs to be on our lips as well. Truly, you are the Son of God. The next time that is spoken in Matthew's gospel is by the centurion at the foot of the crucifixion. Truly, you are the Son of God. So have faith in Jesus. Come to him. Have a sense of adventure. Put any apprehension aside. Come to Jesus, for truly he is the Son of God.